Please welcome Phyllis Wise. Phyllis?
It is such a privilege to be here today in front of the Rotary Club of Seattle, the largest Rotary Club in the world, and the fourth oldest, over 100 years old. To be among people like you who understand the importance of serving, understand the importance of partnership, and understand the importance of engagement so deeply that is really part of your DNA is really a privilege for us to be here today and for me to be able to talk with you. I want to thank you particularly for the work that you are doing with the Business and Economic Development Center at the Foster School. You have helped our students get the kind of learning experience that is so meaningful because it's not just the classroom teaching that they are gaining experience with, but true experiences in the world in which they will go back and really, really become leaders. And it is because of your kind of engagement, your kind of partnership, that our students come out so well after their years at the university. I'm particularly impressed with the fact that you are working with our students not only in Seattle, but in Central and Eastern Washington, and that our students are getting an experience with small businesses, particularly minority-run businesses, so that they understand that they too can make it, that they too can become as successful as you are, that they too can really become leaders in their own communities. I have to say that I was one of those very fortunate people who had wonderful mentoring from the time I was a very young student. And if it were not for other people who guided me before I even knew that I needed any guidance, I'm sure I would not have been here. And what you are doing for these students is to make sure that they are on the right track. And some of them don't even understand that there is a right track, an easy track, a focused way of achieving what they want to achieve, and you are guiding them to do that. So I want to thank all of you. You are amazing citizens, amazing patrons, amazing stewards of our young people. I want to talk to you just as a little bit about one student. It is an anecdotal story, and as a scientist, I understand the importance of statistics and getting an adequate sample size before you make conclusions. But for today, I really only have time to talk with you about one student, and his name is Vance Rausch. He's a student who is the first in his family to ever go to college. The first in his family. So he could not go home to his dad as he was applying to college or to his mom and say, how did you do this? Where should I apply? What should I major in? Where should I think about living on campus? Because his parents never had gone to college. This is the kind of student that we welcome. Over 25% of our undergraduates are first in family to ever go to college. These students, the doors are opening to them the way that no other experience in life really can do. Vance worked 3 jobs because he wasn't sure that he would be able to afford to go to college. And were it not for a scholarship that the Seattle Rotary provided and our Office of Minority Affairs provided, this young man would have had to work and go to school. And dividing your attention that way is not easy, particularly when you are first in family. So the kind of support that you have given, the kind of support that the Foster School is giving, is so instrumental in the success of this kind of student. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the way these students are what we are passionate about. We are a very unique company, because we do not try and make every single student look like every other student. We do not make airplanes where every one of them should be similar to the other and everyone better stay in the air. We do not make cans of Coke where everyone must taste exactly the same. We do not make coffee where you should be able to go into the store every morning and expect every cup of coffee today to taste like the one you had yesterday and the one you had tomorrow. What we do is we take the most diverse students that we possibly can, that come from backgrounds that are unbelievably different. Some of them come from small towns where the freshman class is larger than the number of citizens in their own city. We take them in, we bring them to the University of Washington, and that cauldron allows us to transform their lives, to be able to send them back out into society, ready to be leaders in their communities and in the world. That cauldron that they are in for 4 or 5 and sometimes 6 years is not only the classroom, but what you do for them. The fact that they get to have experiential learning experiences by going into your businesses where you mentor them, and sometimes they teach you as well. So learning is a two-way street, and our students, when they get to work with people like you, learn and allow you to learn what students are thinking in this generation. Now, we cherish the fact that we are a public research university, and I want to say that all 3 of those words are critically important. We are public, we do research and discovery as part of everyday learning, and we are a university that really welcomes not only undergraduates, but graduate students and professional students as well. And I want to assure you that no matter what happens, and we are in very challenging times, we will remain, we will embrace, we will respect, and we will go forward as a major public research university. Our goal is primarily to serve the citizens of this state by educating the children of the families that are citizens of this state, to allow them and our faculty to be able to contribute to you and partner with you so that you can teach us. It is, I don't think, any coincidence that the best universities are in vibrant cities and healthy states, and that those healthy states and vibrant metropolitan areas are partners to the public research universities. So think about it. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Boston, Seattle. What do they share in common? They share in common that the university is a very, very deep and engaged partner with the city that they are in, and that the city is vibrant because the university contributes, and the university is healthy because the city helps to partner and teach. And so we cherish the fact that we are a public research university, and we will always remain that way. Now, I don't want to belittle the economic challenge that we are facing right now. We understand that this state is going through a terrible time, and that the economic recovery in this state is slower than in some other states. And we realize that our legislators and the governor have an incredible time in front of them, a daunting task to balance a budget, basically by cutting expenditures because there are no new revenue streams. We want to partner with our legislature and the governor to try and figure out ways that a public research university can contribute to that economic recovery. And we say that is through our students and our faculty. The story of Vance is only one, but we have 45,000 students on campus, another 45,000 students who are learning through educational outreach, and all of them are trying to get the kind of education, the kind of learning experience that will allow them to contribute. And what we know is that students with a 4-year baccalaureate in general make twice the income, they give back to their communities more, they vote more frequently, they are more philanthropic, and they are healthier. And so the education that they're getting in terms of their classroom and also their partnerships with you are preparing them to be better citizens like you are. And so that is the role of a university. Now, the role of a research university has yet one more aspect to it that is really critical, and that is that we help to discover that next important, sometimes esoteric fact that will become a piece of data that will be translated into information That information will be translated into understanding, and that understanding will be translated into wisdom. So the university encompasses that whole spectrum. We do some what might appear to be esoteric, useless research that oftentimes is the piece of research that actually gets translated into something that you can use, that you can tell us how to improve, and that becomes part of what we consider an assumption of everyday life. So what are we doing to ensure that we remain a vibrant university? And I can say that I am confident that when this economic downturn goes away, which I'm sure it will, that there will be a handful of universities will actually be better off because of the crisis than they were if we had not had a crisis. And I'm confident that the University of Washington will be one of that handful of universities. And why? Because we are leading and managing through that change. We are not just weathering through that change. So I want to tell you just a little bit about a 2-year to 2-decade initiative, which we started last year, and we are going through this year, that I believe will position the university to be able to serve you, to serve our students even better than we would have were we not forced to do this kind of very careful thinking. So the 2-year part is developing a sustainable academic business plan. 4 important words, all of which are equally important. Now, if you know faculty, and I count myself as a faculty member, we sometimes love to create plans that are totally unsustainable, that have no financial grounding. And what we have introduced into this exercise that we are doing over the next couple of years is to have our deans and our faculty think about a sustainable academic business plan. And what we are doing is we're going through some very painful decisions right now in deciding what we cannot do any longer. And so there are 3 criteria that we are using. Is the program excellent? Is it affordable? And is it important to the long-term future success of the University of Washington? And if all 3 of those criteria are not met, we are looking very carefully at whether or not we can or should continue it. Now, in this 2-year plan, we also are trying to make decisions that are right for the 20-year vision of where the university is going to be. And that is to say that we should not be making decisions now that are expedient but do not serve to put that university in the right place in 20 years. Because as a large public research university, it is our responsibility to take on society's most difficult problems. And so we've held focus groups, and we've met with about 1,000 people, both inside and outside the university, and asked the question, where can the university contribute? In partnership with all of you, and with the best faculty that you could ever recruit and retain, and the best students that you can ever recruit and retain, what are those large problems? And as you might expect, since our reputation is based largely on the biomedical sciences and engineering, certainly the area of sustainable environment, health, broadly defined as policy and health care, and the whole area of IT, technology, are certainly coming out in these focus groups. But one that is really important, that I think is also critically important to you, is the idea of sustainable communities, healthy communities. Because what we all realize is that if the community is not healthy, if poverty reigns, you cannot be thinking about sustainable environments, sustainable business, sustainable engineering, sustainable schools of medicine, or anything else that the university really wants. And so when we think about areas that we believe we, in partnership with you, can contribute to this community, it is truly in a few focused but broad areas that we think that the university will excel, must invest in. Now, in order to invest in days like this, clearly we have to consolidate, We have to increase efficiencies. We have to cut in some areas. And we are ready to take that courageous path and do that and not continue to do things at the university just because we've done them for the last 150 years. And we will be celebrating our sesquicentennial this year. So we have been through times like this. There is probably nobody on campus right now who can remember a time that is quite this challenging because it hasn't happened in the last 30 or 40 years. But we've been here for 150 years. The university has been able to survive and thrive through the Civil War, through the World Wars, through depressions, and we have used those opportunities and those challenges to grow and become even better. So in partnership with you, I am sure that the University of Washington will remain a university that serves primarily the state of Washington, but also in so doing creates the kind of environment that makes it better for the nation and the world. So I want to thank you all for inviting me. I'm so pleased to be here. And I save some time to be able to answer some questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. We do have time for a few questions. And so the ground rules are, to refresh your memories, raise your hand and identify a person with the microphones, and then we'll alternate back and forth between the mic handlers. Jan?
Hi, thank you for being here. This morning, Seattle Times cited the University of Washington's tuition as the highest among our public universities in the state, and also talked about the GET program. Would you comment on both of those, please?
Sure. Our tuition and WSU, Washington State University's tuition, are the highest in the state. And it is in part because of the fact that we provide the kind of research environment that we do for our students to benefit from. The first 2 years of college are actually, if anything, less expensive than many of the other colleges, including the community colleges' cost. But when we get into the upper level courses where students are able to go out and partner with you, where students are given very, very intense laboratory experiences, where, particularly in colleges of engineering and also in the sciences and math areas, it's expensive, there is an additional cost to that kind of educational experience. Now, the GET program is one which, as far as I understand right now, stands to be its bottom line is fine. But clearly, if tuition rises rapidly over the next few years, the cost of the coupons, I think they're called coupons, that people buy in order to use for the future is going to have to go up. And so that money can be used as an investment so that it can pay for the college education once the students are of college age.
Thanks very much. In these days of national and state level budgetary crises, would you comment on the outlook for the university for research grants?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you are probably referring to the fact that we are the #1 public university in terms of grants and contracts. And this year we actually came out as either #1 or #2 in terms of the stimulus grant support.
Her mic isn't.
Okay, good. Thanks. We are right now exploring all sorts of different agencies that will be supporting research. So we're not going to depend only upon the NIH, which is our largest agency for federal support, but exploring all sorts of other agencies that also will be supporting research in the future. We are also looking at these much larger grants which involve multiple universities, oftentimes university and business partnerships or university and nonprofit organization partnerships to allow us to be competitive in these much larger consortium type grants which never existed 20 and 30 years ago. So we're thinking ahead.
Dr. Wise, thank you for being here today. And let me just start by saying that I'm a graduate of the University of Washington's MBA program and a big fan of your university. And I think you have a tremendous asset in our community. We're lucky to have you here. I wonder if you could reflect for a few minutes on the recent study that came out that suggests that universities do an inadequate job of training students in critical thinking and communication skills.
Yes. So that report came out of a study that was done and generalized across virtually all disciplines and created an average. And it was a one-year analysis. We actually have a faculty member who is an expert in this area and has done a multiple-year study, also divided it up by discipline. And what her findings are, and I wish I could remember her name, I'm blocking it right now, but what her findings are is that it's hard to evaluate some of the things that are really important, like the experiential learning, the critical learning aspects, not just the quantitative aspects. And it is very discipline specific. So once I remember her name, I'd be more than happy to give you the title of her book and also give you a copy of it, because it's really, I think what's really important is those kinds of generalizations are misleading at best and wrong at worst.
Dr. Wise, thank you for your time. When you look at the university 25 years from now, what is the work that's happening today in corners of the university that are going to push this region forward?
Well, that's a great question. I think we have really pushed forward and expanded in a few areas. One is global health. Certainly the Department of Global Health never existed at that time, and you may know that that is a partnership between our School of Medicine and our School of Public Health, and our new Dean of the School of Public Health is amongst us today. It is a way of dealing with global health in both a local and global way. Our expertise in IT, I think, is something that we didn't have before, perhaps because IT didn't exist the way it does today. But that whole area of computer science engineering, information technology, how you actually deal with these huge data sets where as data, they're not very meaningful, but they need to be consolidated, they need to be translated, they need to be synthesized, and then they need to be used in ways that can be useful to the population. So those are two examples that come to mind immediately.
At various times in the past, your predecessors who have spoken to this club, almost all of them have mentioned that the UW was at a competitive disadvantage in terms of their ability to pay professors vis-a-vis other public universities in other states. You didn't mention that today. Is the landscape changed as other states are suffering the same kind of financial problems we are, or what is happening in that area?
In general, we are able to present assistant professors with pretty good packages. They don't compare with the privates, certainly, and they don't compare with some of our real aspirational peers. But there's more than just money to this, which is really interesting, of course, is the environment in which a faculty member will join, if there's a critical mass of other faculty that will be their colleagues, if there's a community like this to join. Oftentimes, even though the salary offer isn't as good, they will come because the University of Washington is such a marvelous place. Where we fall behind is in our associate professors and full professors, and we are behind. And one of my greatest worries right now is that other universities and other, both privates and publics, are recovering faster, and they know where to come to pick the very best. And so we are very vulnerable because they are coming to berry pick, what I call berry pick. They're coming to take our very best. And it doesn't take too long before that critical mass which attracted them dissipates. And so even though you have 3 faculty left in a group of 6, it's not enough to really keep them here. And once you start losing great faculty, so I think if I yell, once you start losing great faculty, you don't attract the students, and it is a very different place. And one of the things that is so hard is that It takes a long time to build a great university. It takes a short time to destroy it. And to rebuild it takes a long time.
Ma'am, recently I was presented with a situation that just told me how painful the situation is for universities today. I was sitting on a flight back to New York, and next to me was a professor of veterinary medicine at a very large public university in the East, larger than the University of Washington. In response to the problems of cutting budgets, he told me this story. The average graduate in veterinary medicine from this university made about $65,000 if they got a job. The average debt was $166,000. About 25% did not get jobs. The answer to part, at least, of the problem was to increase admissions. So there's an issue there. Obviously, it's a painful thing there, and there's other issues, no doubt. But how do you address that kind of dilemma?
Well, I can safely say you weren't talking about one of our graduates since we don't have a veterinary school, but I can say that the debt that a student graduates with is something that is on our mind all the time. What I can say is that there are only half of our undergraduates who graduate with any debt at all, and that the rate and the amount of the debt that they have accumulated has not changed over the last 5 years, despite the fact that we have increased tuition fairly assertively, in part because we have scholarships to be able to provide students so that they are not paying the full load. So I hope you know about Husky Promise, which is our commitment to undergraduates, citizens of the state of Washington, whose families make an income that make them either Pell Grant or State Need Grant eligible, that they get 4 years of their college education at the University of Washington, tuition and fees free. So they come totally free as long as they are qualified and can get in. And for the students who come from the families with the lowest income, they not only get that, but they get 60% of their living costs while they're there. So we're trying very hard to continue to accept and embrace students regardless of their economic capacity to come. And it allows a lot of students who are first in family, a lot of students of color, a lot of students who would ordinarily not even think about the University of Washington to seriously consider us and to come. Okay?
The governor is now considering Department of Education, which will put Superintendent of Public Instruction under that, the Higher Education Board under that. Just your perspective on the thinking of this department.
Okay, so the question is, what do I think about this new proposal for a Department of Education that the governor has put forward, which basically consolidates a lot of different things that are right now separate. In principle, I am all for efficiencies and coordination and consolidation and getting rid of gaps in information and understanding. We do not know the details of this, but in principle, I think that there is great good in terms of considering that in light of our economic situation. But we're listening and learning from the governor, and we'll be listening and learning relative to what the legislature has to say about all of this.
Dr. Wise, can you tell us the value of an education from the University of Washington and the economic impact that the University of Washington has on our community?
Oh my goodness, did we put you there for that question? Yes, of course I can tell you about that. We give back or produce we're responsible for about $9.1 billion in terms of economic impact. We have 70,000 employees, either directly at the university or indirectly who we contract with. We produce 40% of the undergraduates in the state of Washington. We produce over 70% of the graduate students and professionals. For every tax dollar that we get, and it's a decreasing number, but for every tax dollar that we get, we produce $1.50 in terms of taxable taxes. In terms of economic impact, for every dollar that's invested, we produce $22. I don't know whether you want any more statistics. All of this is on our website. We are an economic engine. I think we will be a partner to this economic recovery, which we must have. I was staying away from numbers today, but I'd be happy to give you more.
Ma'am, the private sector has expressed concern recently about the number of engineers, math, and science skilled people that are coming into the workforce, and that we don't have a sufficient quantity. What is the university doing to increase those numbers?
We have invested differentially into STEM areas, what's called STEM areas, science, technology, engineering, and math. I've been here for 5 years, and there's been a concerted effort to increase investment in those areas. And the trend is in the right direction. We have been producing more each year in terms of graduates in those areas. Will we be able to continue to do that if we are cut even further? I'm not going to promise anything, but we understand that the state needs that kind of educated individual to be able to go to Boeing, to be able to go to Microsoft, to be able to go to any number of small companies that need that kind of education.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Wise. We are adjourned.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.